Have you been having a nice day? Good. So I'm here to talk about the film. And it's really important to know that the film is not about activists. The film is about people becoming activists, which is kind of the experience I had making the film. I absolutely wasn't an activist to start with. In fact, the reason that I chose to go to University College London to have a look at the occupation was because there was a boy that I really fancied, and he was going. And I was like, I kind of fancy you, so I'm going to go and see what you're interested in, like make out like I really didn't really care, basically, until I got into the space. In the space, there were maybe 150 people, and they were communicating in a way that I'd never witnessed before. They were using consensus. I don't know if we know about this. Consensus. It's the form of decision-making that you see across the Occupy movement. It's been in the environmental movement for years. And it's basically, if you agree with something, if someone's speaking, you agree with what they're saying, everyone puts their hands up like this. So instead of applauding or anything like that, you just quietly go, yeah, I agree. And if you disagree, it's like, that's a bad idea. We're not going to do that. And if you think it's okay, you do this. But what I found really interesting about it is that it meant there was space to listen. And people were really, really listening to each other. People were really respecting each other's opinions. And that's the thing that made me want to stay in that space. So there were three of us there, and we decided that we wanted to help, we wanted to get involved. So what we decided to do is, we were like, well, we're filmmakers, we'll make a film. So we made a 4-minute film. We were up for 48 hours, shooting stuff, cutting it together, gave it to them. They loved it, they put it on YouTube. It got 5,000 hits in a day. And then on the basis of that, we were like, I don't know how we would make a film here, but we'd like to if you'd let us stay. So that went to the vote. Well, consensus. Can we stay? Yes, we've got the jazz hands. So we stayed. And from that point, what we witnessed, we followed this group for about 6 months in total. And the first protest that we filmed with them was the December the 9th protest, which was the last protest of 3 that had been organised by an organisation called the National Campaign Against Fees and Cuts. They were the organisation that came together because the National Union of Students, the usual people who would organise something like this, had decided they weren't going to oppose the £9,000 increase to tuition fees. They weren't going to actively do anything about it. So we needed a more sort of radical group, and this is the group that was created. So this protest turned out to be the biggest protest. There were, I believe, about 130,000 students on the streets. It escalated, it became a mess. There was kettling, which you'll see a lot of in the film. I don't know if it's a term that you've heard before, but basically kettling basically means the police containing a protest. So you'll be out on the streets, you'll be doing whatever, and the police will contain you and stop you from moving, and they will hold you there. And on that day, they were holding people in a kettle for 9 hours on that day. So people they didn't have access to toilets, they didn't have access to food or water for 9 hours. So that was that day. So what's particularly interesting about the student movement in London at the moment is that there are school children involved. This has never happened before. There have always been student movements, not in the UK for a long time, but there have always been student movements. Never before have you seen school children out protesting. That's new. And what's interesting about what was happening is that the students, the university students who were out on the streets, they weren't protesting for themselves. The increase in fees that was being proposed would not affect them. They were doing it in solidarity with the younger students, the school students, who are about to come up and go to university, or in this case, possibly not. So the school students were occupying their schools, which is pretty cool. And they were organising using Twitter and Facebook and all those sorts of things, which is the same as the university students. And the university students were helping or training, in a way, the school students to get organised. So that was new, unprecedented stuff. So what's particularly interesting about what was going on then is not only the fees that were going up. The EMA, which is the Educational Maintenance Allowance, which is £30 a week that goes to the poorest students, school students, from the age of 16 to 18 to help them stay in school, was being cut, which is one of the reasons why they were out on the streets. It's also interesting because it ties in with a lot of the reasons why we saw some of the riots that happened in the following summer. It's because it's these young people, these young school students, that were having their opportunities and their futures being cut. Now, it's kind of dangerous to propose that the riots were political. I don't believe necessarily that what happened in the riots was political in itself, or was immediately political, but I think overall, on a wider scale, I believe that they were political, and we have to look at them in terms of politics. So, after that, we did a crowdfunding campaign when we finished the film. So that meant that we made a little trailer, put it online, and we posted it on Indiegogo, which is a crowdfunding website. What that means is that we had to then tweet about it, Facebook it, just stick it up everywhere, make sure that everybody knew that we were trying to raise $10,000 to fund the film. In the end, it took about 2 months to raise $10,500, which was pretty amazing. And it ended up being one of the successes for Indiegogo, which is really, really great. So now we're in a position where we have the film and we're getting it out there. We wanted to use it, we wanted to make it as a tool so that we could show it in university, so that we could get young people galvanized and wanting to go out and be political, stay political. So the idea was to get it shown in university. So it's been screened in several universities across the UK. There were 56 universities in occupation in November of 2010, and almost all of them have screened the film now. Well, a lot of them have screened the film now. So it's got its legs. It's got its sort of it's got its following. So it's kind of it's getting there basically. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I've got to say. If there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah. Or if it's now, I don't know. Maybe I should ask this question later, or it will be answered if I see the movie. But
I have 1 minute.
Okay,
so I can do it. What's the purpose of the film? The purpose of the film was to understand the process of becoming an activist. How people become activists, what you do, as well as the use of technology and so on that was going on at the time. But we wanted, ultimately, for the film to be a guidebook for anybody who wanted to occupy or want to do any kind of serious, like, get your hands dirty activism. So yeah, it's a beginner's guide to becoming an activist, basically. Yeah, thank you.